Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. We have DeAndré Aubry, and he is joining us from Legally Fit. Now, for those of you who don't know me yet or don't know us, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the executive director and founder of Barrier Breakers. We are a faith based 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to increase access to and success in higher education for BIPOC and other marginalized students. You may know us more from our work with S. Montgomery Admissions Consulting, which is a brand underneath Barrier Breakers, where we specialize in working with first generation and minority law school students and applicants. And today I'm so excited because I get to have a little conversation with you with my friend DeAndré Aubry. We've been working together for the last 6 months. He was such a great sponsor at our second annual Break Into Law conference, and he is going to share some amazing tips with you. So DeAndré Aubry is a proud alum of Loyola High School, Howard University, and Southwestern Law School. He is the owner and founder of Legally Fit, and as a first generation law student himself, which we have in common, he definitely experienced his fair share of challenges and obstacles. However, he didn't let that stop him from graduating in the top 5% of his class, passing the California bar exam on his first attempt, and having some amazing experiences along the way. So I am going to bring up DeAndré and he can tell us a little bit about himself. So DeAndré, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. I would say I start off by I never really planned on going to law school. This was something for me that kind of developed slowly through undergrad, where I started kind of developing this interest of like, okay, hold on. I'm really enjoying the law, learning the law, the process that goes into analyzing, right? Seeing things from both sides objectively, all that stuff. And so what happened was I took a business law course at Howard University and it had a 70% failure rate. All right. So at that time, you had 70% of the students taking that class, failing out, and therefore not graduating on time. And honestly, through just the fear of failure and not being able to get back to my homeland in California, I ended up doing really well in that class. I ended up testing out of the final. And that was really where this whole whirlwind of law school really began. And I started to consider, all right, I think this is really is a path for me. And so all that to say, I went into Southwestern Law School. Funny enough, I got admitted 2 weeks before school started. Again, it was all like a very rushed last minute kind of process for me. And I started school and I was fortunate to do really well. First semester, I got a 4.0. From there, I was able to keep either that or very close GPA throughout the rest of law school. And in my third year, I started this program called Study with the President. I became SBA president in my last year. And in doing that program, I realized that there were so many students, especially as you mentioned, our BIPOC students, our marginalized students, that were putting in the work for law school, but just not getting the results. And it was a head scratcher for me. And so again, I started this program to donate and volunteer my time on the weekends to assist students with their success in law school. It was from this Study with the President program that I created in my third year that the idea for Legally Fit was birthed. And, here we are now 10 years later, and I'm sure we'll get into that more in a bit, but that's where it all started, was basically just helping out students while I was in law school, having a knack for understanding the law and knowing how to apply it and knowing what professors are looking for and figuring out, as we know, right, it's not easy being a teacher always. You could understand something, but teaching it is another skill set. And so realizing that I had the ability to translate and break down what I was doing that was successful, that other people could take that and apply it to their study process, to their classes, etc. And so
I love that. And Legally Fit is one of the best law school study resources, study programs, and bar prep programs there is, especially for first gen and minority students. But tell us a little bit about what you wish you would have known before you went to law school.
This is actually a pretty good question. I'm gonna have two answers to this. The first thing I'm gonna say is really nothing else, right? So I kind of told you I was a little wet behind the ears. I didn't really have much time to gain that much information about law school prior to going. And in a weird way, that actually worked to my benefit. So, Sydney, right? I know you can remember back to that law school year, that 1L year, and there's just all these nerves that naturally come with it. But I think I missed a good amount of those nerves and that kind of anxiousness because I didn't have time to like freak out or time to get scared. And I really think that played a big component into my success. Where, during that year, it was just kind of like, all right, let's go. This is just like school. Let me come in. And because I didn't know anything, Sydney, I even more so had the mindset of, let me be humble to this learning environment and let me soak up all the lessons. I didn't come in like, oh, I know it all already. I know what to expect. That is particular to my story. And I appreciated not having so much of that information beforehand. Now, if I did have something that I wanted to share on what I wish I would have known going into law school, I think I would have loved to know just a little bit more on what actually contributes to your grades. Whenever a student gets into law school, the very first thing essentially that they're met with is this long list of case briefing and reading, right? And that's like the number one time sucker in law school. And so many students, as we know, will obsess over that preparation for class and coming off as the smartest person in the class, right? And all these things. But most 1Ls who do that quickly realize that case briefing and reading is not necessarily the biggest doesn't have necessarily the biggest correlation to success on final exams. And so I think knowing that there is a whole different slew of tasks and responsibilities that do correlate to strong grades, which is outlining and practice essays and things like that. So that would be the one thing I wish I knew, not being so like, okay, like I think I just should read and brief every day and that's going to set me up for success.
As someone who works with a lot of incoming and current law school students, what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing when students are approaching their law school studies? You've mentioned a couple of things like outlining and case briefing, but what are some of those common mistakes that you see from students?
And when you say preparing for law school, what phase really are we, talking about? Are we talking about in the application process? Or are we talking about I've applied, I've been accepted, and maybe mistakes in that phase of, all right, it's 2 to 3 months to get ready for school?
I would say let's touch on both. Let's touch on the common mistakes that you see students make, leading up to starting law school, but then even the common mistakes that you see students make in that first year of law school.
So yeah, I would say leading up to law school, that area is one in which, there's a lot of great resources and people out there, with Sydney Montgomery being a top resource in working with students in this phase. I think the common mistake that students make in approaching their first year of law school is not setting their life up for law school. Again, many of us who go to law school are extremely intelligent. We've performed well in other educational environments. And you're like, all right, we're here for the next challenge. And I don't think a lot of us realize the demands that law school really has, especially if you want to be successful or score highly or well on those exams. And so, I remember in my first semester, Sydney, I read more than I did in my entire 4 years of undergrad,
Wow.
right? So that's just that like dynamic of how much work this is compared to, again, undergrad or even other graduate programs as well. So back to the answer: prepare your life for law school. So whether that's preparing your relationships in the sense that you need to let the people around you know, whether it's friends, family, etc., that are used to a certain availability of you, that availability is going to look different, at least for this next pivotal 1L year. And then outside of that, get all the little stuff out of the way that might come up later in the semester, right? If you're moving apartments soon, move apartments before the semester starts. Don't wait until 2 months into the semester. Now you're dealing with that if you can avoid things like that. Or, your passport has to be renewed. Handle that early. Get all that stuff out. You want to create as clean of a first semester as possible to have no interruptions and get those lessons as quickly as possible. And, I'll tell my quick kind of funny story, right? Not only is it preparing the relationships, it's also considering which relationships you might need to let go of. I remember I had a girlfriend at the time going into law school. It was a great person, great situation, for the time being, but it got to a point where this felt like this wasn't going anywhere anymore. And you was like, you know what, let me take this off of my plate so I can create more space again for this challenge. So I always say I don't give the recommendation that you have to break up with your partner to do well in law school. But the idea is to consider where you can pull from. And for each person, that'll be different. Some of us have an extremely packed social life. Maybe you need to pull from that. Some of us are in family obligations every day, all day. Maybe you need to pull from that. And then the number one easy mistake that I see 1Ls make is not doing practice exams before their final exams. I can tell you what the culprits are. and the reasons why. Students will be so inundated with case briefing and reading, right? And that's the number one task, and so much of that to do that they're constantly doing that so much, they're not sacrificing a little bit of that time to do practice exams. That's number one. So not enough time. And then at some point they get caught up with outlining. That takes up time as well. Number two is that students have this fear, Sydney, of I don't want to do practice exams until I'm like ready to crush it. And it's a stigma that I try so hard to reverse. You don't want to do practice exams once you're ready to kill it. You want to do practice exams to prepare yourself and get to the point of being able to crush it. Let go of that fear, students, of, oh, I'm not ready yet. And stop looking at practice exams as an indication of how well you're going to do on the exam. Look at that practice exam as an opportunity to grow and improve. It's like going to the DMV and trying to get your driver's license and you've never gotten behind the wheel before. All you've done is played like video games or, behind like in your house stuff. You just done these other things, but you haven't actually gotten behind the wheel. And you don't want to do that with these law school exams. Go ahead and do these practice exams early and often. All right. And then here's the last thing. You can tell I'm passionate about this topic. The last thing on this is that sometimes professors will give you practice exams. Did you have professors, Sydney, would you say, that gave you a lot of like practice exams throughout the semester?
I don't think that our professors really gave us practice exams, but we had a bank of practice exams, so they were available to students for sure.
Good. And that is the reality with law school, that it's like it's really hit or miss on the 1L professors that you are assigned. And you will have one professor that gives you 50 practice essays that they have done. And then another professor might be new and give you one or two. And then now you have to rely on a bank or supplemental questions, right? We'll talk about Legally Fit and how we're here to help with that. But all that to say, let's go with the professor who gives you 50. One of the other things that I would see is students would wait until the very end to do the practice essay that was most recently tested, right? So if we had an exam from last semester that this professor now provides, a student will hold off on that until the last day because they want to use that as an indication, where it's like, no, like if that's the exam that's the most indicative of how he's currently testing, let me start with that, study that, do it multiple times, not leave it for the last thing that I do. So
That makes a lot of sense. Every school is different. That message of not waiting until the last minute to prepare and using practice exams throughout your preparation is very important. What are the ways, when we think about even structurally or individually, what are the ways that you feel like BIPOC students specifically need more support in law school to excel? And what are the ways that we can be helping our BIPOC, our first generation students excel throughout their law school career?
I want to say the answer is both complicated and simple. When I say it's complicated, is that there are things that we need to do to help our BIPOC students. But then when I say it's simple, it's that BIPOC students are so capable of thriving in this space that it's not like you're going to be rocket science. And so breaking that down, one of the biggest things that we see, right, and it's a term that we're all familiar with at this point, is imposter syndrome. And it's that mental game going into law school and being in this environment that's new and different and maybe uncomfortable and all these things that really affect us. And that goes back to that first point I was telling you, Sydney, that kind of being so green in this process and not having much time to mentally kind of psych myself out or feel worried or nervous played to it. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely dealt with my share of imposter syndrome once in there, but I think it was less because I didn't have as much time again to freak out. So going a little bit deeper into that, the imposter syndrome, the ways that I think that we can start to attack that is, number one is representation. Representation both in the law school faculty that we have and representation in the peers and the classmates that we have. I think it's hard to reverse anything in this category when you feel like you're the only one of your kind in your space. I always pulled from Apple. Yeah, you remember back in the day when Apple completely changed the game, right? Their whole retail experience was something unlike anything else. Now everything is online, but they found something. And really what it was that when you would walk into an Apple store, you would immediately be able to see somebody that you can connect with, right? Whether it was the color of their skin, the tattoos that they had, the way that they dressed, their personality. There was something that you found right in that store, or somebody you found where it's like, hey, I can go talk to that person. And that was a big deal, right? Because Apple was trying to make tech, which is also a new language for so many of us, something that was conversational and humanized, right? So for me coming in, not knowing anything about computers and the technicality of all these different things, I could find somebody who I felt comfortable talking to, and then we could have a conversation around, hey, this is what's going on in my life with, my tech needs. What can you provide? And it was just a smooth conversation. So yeah, bringing that all back to law school, like we need that. We need representation in law school. We need professors for students to be able to just come and just like, you know what, like I'm struggling a little bit with this concept, and be able to comfortably talk. And the reality is, again, is that having representation, having people that you can see yourself in really helps with that comfort level. So that's number one, is more representation. The second thing that I think can really help our BIPOC students and our marginalized students is delivering the law and teaching the law in a context that these students can relate to. So I always say that when you get to law school, for first gen students, right, and a lot of us minority students, BIPOC students, we're learning two different languages. We're learning the law, which is clearly in different language. I don't know anything about contracts law coming into law school, or the depths of wills and trusts and estates and all that stuff. So the law itself is a different language. And then in addition to that, you're being taught the law in a context and in scenarios that for many of us are also foreign. So then also a new law. So the quick example there is, I'm learning contracts in the context of a construction deal, a general contractor working with a subcontractor and needing lead pipe. And I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand this at all. Let's break down contracts in the context for some of us where it's like, hey, I was trying to buy a Coachella ticket from somebody, they agreed, and then they backed out of the deal at the last minute. Like, okay, like, why did you just say that? Like, I get that. So I think it's delivering the law in examples and contexts that can build comfort and resonate. And then still that can prepare us for the other scenarios. Like, we still have to deal with the construction contracts, but we can build up to that, as opposed to just getting straight hit with that, from the beginning.
You recently sponsored the Break Into Law conference, which we are very grateful for. Why
Yes.
is it important for you to support and sponsor aspiring BIPOC pre law students?
Yeah, so I mean, if it's not clear, my passion is helping BIPOC and marginalized students do well in law school. I think everybody is capable of success in this space. My goal is to get students off on the right start. As we all know, that 1L year is so pivotal. It really sets you up for the rest of your law school career. Now, of course, for anybody that doesn't do well in their first year, you can always make up for it and figure it out. But I always say it's like a board game, like the game of life. When you play in this board game, there's different starting points with doing well in 1L year that puts you on this starting point and this trajectory that has like a straight beeline to the finish line. It's very good. It's very easy. You've done a lot of the hard work. And actually, I think the game I'm thinking of is Candyland. And I think Candyland was the one, right, that it had like multiple kind of like paths, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so all that to say, like, sometimes not doing well in your first year could put you on the track that has a little bit more, roundabouts and circles and dips and valleys and lows, right? All that stuff. But the reality is that you can still get to the finish line. So that's why I love using that analogy, that no matter what you do, you can always be successful. All that to say, law school, 1L year, it hits hard and it hits fast. You feel like you're always just, right, trying to complete all these assignments. And by the way, one of my number one mantras for law students, for 1L to remember, is that you are assigned more work than what you're able to complete, which is something good to keep in mind, because if you have this unrealistic expectation that you're going to do everything, it's going to set you up for failure. But I digress. Going back to your question, why pre-law students, why sponsor the conference, and why get involved in this space? It's because 1L year is so fast and it's so much information. Why not break down that information and offer it to students in that pre-law phase, again, for the same goal of setting them up for success? It was super awesome being a part of your conference, talking to students, and allowing them, again, to have as comfortable of a law school experience as possible, where you're receiving this information, right, slowly in bite-sized amounts. So in theory, at no point does it become too overwhelming. You're ready for this, right, at every stage.
I love that. And we are so happy to have you not just sponsoring the conference, but also to have you in our ecosystem, right? To be able to tell our students, whether they're students that worked with us throughout the application process or students who are finding out about us through our podcast, through our YouTube, even once they're in law school, to have you as a resource. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about Legally Fit. I wanted
Oh,
how Legally Fit got started, what was the genesis of that, and also what are the various ways that you guys support students?
yeah. So again, going back to that third year as SBA president, I started the whole study with the president to volunteer my time for free to give students that clarity as to what they needed to do and how they needed to do it to be successful. And I remember literally walking away from one of these Saturday sessions, study with the president, and one of the students was like, "Man, like, I wish this was like offered. I wish I had more of your time." Right. And that was kind of like the light bulb moment where it's like, what? Like, this actually doesn't exist. Like, there is not a resource, again, especially for BIPOC and minority students, but really in general, there's this like missing kind of need in law school of like, can somebody make this make sense? Like, can we simplify this whole approach to law school and the material that's being taught? So that's really what Legally Fit is and how it got started, and to kind of give you a little bit of the evolution of how Legally Fit has grown. So I think that's a pretty cool and fun story. It started off as I had this concept, Sydney, that I really wanted to have this extremely hand holding personal experience directly with me, right? So every semester I would take 10 students and work with them 3, 4 times a week with each student. Very, again, personal, very intensive with all of us working together, both individually, also in small groups with that cohort. And in my first semester, I ended up having 5 students that signed up for this service. And as I was going through the semester, friends of these 5 students kept coming to me and saying, like, I really need help, but I don't need the hand holding for the entire semester. I'm just in contracts right now, and my professor just taught 2207, and I have no idea what's going on. Like, can you just help me out with that? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so what came from that is me realizing and listening to, again, the audience, which I think is so important as a business owner, is like, listen to your customers, listen to your clients. And what they were telling me was that we just want this a la carte assistance. We kind of want this like revolving door of being able to come in for what I need and when I need it. And so we switched up our offerings a little bit in that first semester, Sydney, by saying, like, hey, we'll offer one-on-one for an hour booking whenever you want it. And we ended up having 50 students in our first semester come through that. This is all, again, year one, semester one. And that's when I quickly realized that that was the direction that we had to go in. And so kind of fast forward a little bit and summarize the next 10 years, I quickly realized that I needed to build materials, videos, resources that broke things down to the specific topic that students wanted to get assistance in. And so that's essentially what we have now, is a bank of materials and resources in the form of outlines, practice questions and hypotheticals, lecture videos for the auditory learners that like that engaging classroom environment, and then flowcharts and visual diagrams so we can see the law come alive, not just be in linear text format, but have a flow to it and have a visual appeal. And so I broke that down for each topic in law school. So again, students can kind of access it. It's very menued out, kind of like a Netflix, right? It's like I can go into the genre I want. I can go into the specific actor that I want, however detailed you want it to be, you can access it in that way. So we've done law school coaching now for 10 years, and we've also done bar prep for about 6 years. And kind of going back to the beginning of the story on bar prep, in that first year, Sydney, before I even got my results on whether I passed the bar, one of my students that I came across was so impressed and enjoyed my teaching style so much. She asked, hey, can you help me prepare for the bar exam? And I said, look, full disclosure, like, I'm still waiting for my results, but by all means, if you want to do this dance, I will do it with you. And so, as we know, ended up passing the bar exam and finding that out in the middle of our studying. So that was fun. Like, all right, we're in the right place together. We should be doing this. I ended up helping this student, and she went on to pass the bar exam on her first attempt. And then it was just like, well, look at that. We're passing the bar exam now, and we have something to offer in this space. And similarly so, I took the steps year after year of slowly developing amazing, consistent materials to build out a bar prep program. And we started off as a supplement to other bar prep programs. It started off as you're taking X company or Y company and you're not liking those lectures and you're not understanding the law, come here and wherever you have the biggest gaps, we'll fill those in. That's how we started. And then we slowly were able to then develop into a complete standalone bar prep where we have a full service program and course for students to prepare for the exam. And it's amazing. I'm so impressed and so proud of what it's become and what it is now. And also, to be honest with you, I'm super excited for this next challenge of the next gen bar exam. I can tell you, even before this podcast that we're doing today, I was looking at the new style of questions and getting excited about that. And for the record, I think it's going to be great for students in general because it does kind of force you to think, I would say, in a more natural way. I won't do too much on that. I still need to do all my due diligence on the research, but what I could say is, as of now, I am excited about the direction that the questions are going in. But that's really the history of Legally Fit. So again, that summary, we do law school coaching and we do bar prep. And then to your point, we have now started to take what we do that's so good in law school and bar prep and then bring that in as an early preview in pre-law. We have a pre-law master class now that gives you just the right amount of that information at the right time for you to take that early step and develop some of those skills and knowledge and perspective on law school to set yourself up for success.
I love that. And you've also recently launched the 1L Club. So tell me a little bit about what the 1L Club is. What are the goals of the program? Who is it for? Maybe who is it not for? Just anything like that.
Absolutely. So, right by title, we know that it's for 1Ls and it's for 1Ls at any law school in the country. Now, going past the name, it's actually for 2Ls as well that did not figure out 1L year, that are still looking to improve their skills, their study habits, time management, right? Things like that. But this is really tailored and geared towards my 1Ls. I mean, I think again, pre-law students, this is a free service, so feel free to jump in there because why not? But for 1Ls, as we know, Sydney, again, law school hits hard and it hits fast. Sydney, would you say that for your 1L experience, there was feelings of, all right, this is a lot of information at once. This is overwhelming. Like, would you say that was your experience?
I I don't really like to comment on my 1L experience because I have always been someone that's been able to do well in school, but probably not the best student at all times. And I think God has just looked out for me. So my faith in God, I think, got very strong during school, because He's like, I really need you to be doing this. And I see that you're over here. I was like, I want new friends. I was 21 when I went to law school. I think my priorities might not have been as strong as they could have been, but God provides. He provided me to go to a school without grades. So we thank
Yes.
God for that. Shout out to Harvard. Shout out to Harvard's grading system.
So yeah, that is a very fortunate system to be in, right? With no grades, where it's just kind of like, you know what, I can balance my time with some socializing, right, and all that stuff.
Have
So
studied more. I could have studied more.
so the point that I'm getting to is so many 1Ls at the different schools. You come in and it's like, do this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? All the way down the alphabet list of all this information. Some information that you don't even really need to be dealing with until the middle of the semester or the end. So it just becomes this overwhelming experience. So all that to say, the 1L Club, which, we're already in now the midst of our first season, first semester of it. It's so amazing because what we've done is I've created what I call the 5 steps or the 5 phases of a successful law school semester. Step number 1 is preparing for the journey, right? This is before you even start the semester. Prepare for that journey. We talked a little bit about that. Then the next step is master the fundamentals. The fundamentals of 1L year are going to be things like reading and briefing, outlining, knowing what IRAC is, right? You have this whole list of things. And then the remaining phases that you have there are going to be things around how to start preparing for final exams, how to actually go through the final exam phase. And then another big skill as developing the skills. Because it's not just knowing the law. You can know the law and get all C's. You have to know the law and know how to translate that to law school exams. I have these 5 phases. We don't need to talk about everything in the beginning of the semester. Now, what we do, Sydney, is every week we introduce a new skill or theme of the week that is within its 5 phases, right? So right now we are in the middle of mastering the fundamentals. Last week, the theme of the week was case briefing and reading. And so what we do is on Tuesday, we have a Zoom session. And I know how the modern student is. They have no time, right? They want to get in and get out. Nobody wants to watch movies anymore because it's 2 hours long. We want to watch TV shows, even though we'll binge watch it and watch 6 hours of it. I don't want it to say that it is 2 hours long because we're not watching it. So we have these Zoom sessions for 20 minutes where we go in and we get straight to the nitty gritty on how do you want to improve this skill? What are the things that you need to know? Here are some action items for what you can do for the rest of the week regarding this skill. And the whole purpose of the 1L Club is to really provide 2 points of value. One, introduction to the skills and legally fits delivery and style that may connect with you. And then 2, giving you the trust and comfort that I got your back. Legally Fit has got your back all throughout the semester. So there's no need to freak out or feel anxious about what should I be doing, right? Because there's always that feeling in law school, like, should I be doing something else? Should I be doing this? And each week we're going to be telling you what you should be doing. So the other thing is I want students to really be able to lean into this community, lean into this village of they're going to tell me what to do and when to do it. So I don't have to stress. It really is your guider in this world that's foreign to you of how to succeed. So that is the 1L Club.
I love the fact that there is a community because I think community is so important. It's important not just for the actual tangible benefits of community, but also I think some of the things that we talked about at the beginning, that mental, that imposter syndrome, right? To be around other people. I wanted to address this myth a little bit before we kind of head into the end of the interview, but I wanted to talk about people's feelings of gotten into law school, but I don't have a strong undergraduate background. Maybe they weren't a great student in undergrad or they had a lower GPA. You know, if they've worked and they've really worked on it, but man, it's been a while since they've been in school and they're not sure that their undergrad really prepared them the most for law school. What do you say to students that have that fear about their undergraduate preparation?
This is a new beginning, right? And to that point earlier, I was saying, like, look, use me as an example. I had no idea I was going to law school really until I applied in my final year of undergrad. And 2, I got into school 2 weeks before it started, right? I had nobody I knew in law. I had no concept of what law was going to challenge me with. Biggest piece of advice to me is be humbled by the environment, by this experience, right? Go in knowing you don't know anything. And so once you do that, you have a mindset of like, let me absorb, let me soak up all what I can. And Sydney, I'm sure if you experienced too, you also have to have a filter as well, because you're going to be getting so much information from so many sources and people on what you should be doing and when you should be doing. And I always tell students, you have to filter that out, because if you're a student then that's just being pulled in every which direction by different people, that's not going to be a comfortable experience either. So you come into law school and you don't have any expectations. You don't have any expectations of success, and you don't have any expectations of failure either. And everybody is going to come into law school with some set of strengths. They wouldn't have accepted you if they didn't think that you had an opportunity to be successful in this environment. And everybody's strengths may look different. So identify those, play to those, and then figure out what your weaknesses are and improve those. For some of us, for example, for me, even though I knew nothing about law, one of my strengths was that I've always been a very objective person, right? The ability to see something from both sides, right? Even if I was in an argument with a family member or a friend, or I'm being a mediator to another dispute between other people, I found myself able to really put myself in the shoes of both sides. Well, that particular skill is something that translates to law school because that's often what we're asked to do. So you may have an analytical skill like that. You may have an intangible skill, like you are a really strong reader and your reading comprehension is great, which is so important in law school. Or maybe your typing speed is really good. For anybody who is wanting to figure out what those strengths and weaknesses are, there's so many resources and assessments you can do now early on before going to law school to see what it's like. I think for me and you, there wasn't as many things available to us to get this taste of law school before. So it was much more of this hidden veil. Well, you have resources like Sydney Montgomery now, you have resources like Legally Fit, where you can start to see what this experience is going to be like and start preparing for it. So that was a long-winded answer, but I think I touched on everything in there. Did I?
Yeah, I loved it. And it's so important you mentioned like the typing speed and the reading comprehension because students often ask me, and law school preparation, the actual academic preparation is not my forte. But students often ask, like, how do I prepare? And I'm always like, if you're a slow reader, now's the time to learn
Yeah.
fast. If you're a slow typer, now's the time to take some typing games, right? Like there are just little things that will really make a big difference in your 1L year.
And to that point, and just to give it a little extra focus on the last one, like you said, reading comprehension. Sydney, I cannot tell you how many A students from undergrad come into law school with poor reading comprehension because undergrad exams oftentimes don't require strong reading comprehension. Let's be real. A lot of times, undergrad exams are just memorization tests, right? Now, it depends on your major, of course, but I can tell you as a marketing major, it was just like, all right, what are the different marketing techniques? Here are the four, you know? Reading comprehension is the silent killer for me for 1Ls. Here's the worst case scenario of what can happen, and I've seen this personally happen. You get to an exam, the end of the exam says, I want you to answer this criminal law question in the context of the common law. Right. So for those that don't know, you may have different bodies of law within that same subject. So criminal law, you could have the common law, and you can also have the model penal code, which is another body of rules that's different. It's like same concepts, but there's variations to it. All that to say, Sydney, I had a 1L, studied her butt off all semester, all year, was really positioned to do very well. She put in the work, put in the prep. And on this final exam, she was moving too fast, reading comprehension. She did not see the end of that question where it said, answer according to common law. And instead, she answered according to the MPC. As we know, law school graders and law school professors can be quite unforgiving when it comes to their cut sheet and what you have. And if it doesn't match up, sorry, I can't give you the points. And for those that don't know, even if there's a dispute after, even if the professor made a mistake, most schools have the policy that grades cannot be changed after they are given. So it is so important for you to make it clear, right, that you know the right answer and you have everything right. That student did not clearly do as well as they could have in that class for a simple mistake is not reading something. And that's like in the extreme case. The other thing that we see, Sydney, is you're dealing with these fact patterns on final exams. I've seen students countless times make up facts. The fact pattern will say, Sydney threw a marker at the back of DeAndre's head. What torts are we dealing with? And in the analysis, I'm seeing Sydney threw a piano at DeAndre's leg. And it's like, what? That's the wrong item. That is the wrong body part that it hit. People will make up facts. People will forget certain facts. So there's just so much of a lack of attention around reading comprehension and how important it is. And that's easily a skill that people can work on before going to law school. Like go to the California bar website, go to your state bar's website, whatever state that may be, and pull up some exams. And even though you don't know the law, all you have to simply do to practice reading comprehension is read a fact pattern intently and carefully for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then step away from it and see how much of that fact pattern you can remember.
Or
And
even
start,
read, like read a book, read any book.
yes, exactly.
So
Like
many people
there are
don't
ways.
read anymore.
Yes, exactly. We're so used to video, right? We're so used to just like content coming to us in so many different ways that yes, just read at the very right. So
Yeah, I know we're almost at the end. I have one final question before you hopefully tell students where they can find you and get plugged into your resources outside of Legally Fit and all the amazing work that you're doing. What other ways do you like to give back to your community, BIPOC communities, other communities, faith communities, just so students can get to know you even more?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I have very much so a Kobe Bryant mentality of all eggs in one basket. And so when I think of how do I help my community and the community at large the most right now, it's what me and my amazing team pour into Legally Fit. I mean, this is like all we do, and we go hard, and we are always looking to innovate and to update and to listen to our students and what they need. And I can even tell you over the past 10 years, the needs of students have changed. The attention towards mental health in the process of law school has evolved. The type of learners have evolved. We've gone from, like you said, people who read nonstop to now people who watch videos nonstop. And so, how do you adapt to that, right? And all those things. But we know that when it comes to BIPOC and marginalized students, or marginalized people for that matter, there's so many ways to fight the fight. There's so many different points of the battle, and we've decided to be a pillar and a voice in the legal community for law students of change is needed. And that is the fight. And it is a fight. We're going to law schools, and we're trying to put pressure on law schools that you guys need to do better. You need to offer more, right? And look, Legally Fit is here as an option for you to use. But even if it's not us, you need something. We can't go on and continue to ignore the performance disparities between BIPOC and non-BIPOC students. Outside of that, just getting to know me a little bit more, anytime that I'm not spending into helping law students, I'm spending into family. Like that's where the rest of my time goes into, and working on that village and pouring into that, and always trying to work and develop those relationships.
I love that. I love that. Well, please, first off, thank you. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for all of the wisdom that you've dropped. Can you please let us know how students can find you? Like, how can they get in touch with you with Legally Fit?
Yes. So you can follow us on Instagram. It's at Legally Fit Student. You can follow us on LinkedIn. It's going to be my personal DeAndré Aubry. And then lastly, of course, we have the website, which I love our website. It's super informative. It walks you through everything we do, why we do it, what our mission is, etc. And that website is legallyfitstudent.com. And again, no matter what part of your phase that you're in, pre-law, law school, or bar prep, we've got something for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much. And guys, we love DeAndre. We love Legally Fit. So definitely make sure to check out the resources. As always, make sure that you are following us, you are liking and subscribing to our podcast, Break Into Law School, and also this YouTube channel. Sharing is caring. So make sure that you share this with a friend, anyone that you know that could use this resource, whether they're thinking about law school or already in law school. If you have comments or questions, you can always submit them to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. Otherwise, we will see you very soon. Thank you so much, and thank you, DeAndre.